Hey, before we get into the video, over 70% of you that watch this channel aren't subscribed. Let's go ahead and change that and hit that subscribe button so I can hit 500,000 subs this year. That's all I ask of you. Now, without any further ado, let's get into the video.
Hey, RGT85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my God, it's Stevie!
So one of the things that I'm really looking forward to in 2023 is Nintendo potentially talking about new hardware. I know, everyone loves the Switch. It's the greatest system ever. We never want it to go away, but realistically, at some point in time, there has to be a successor to it. There has to be something of an evolution. If we didn't evolve our systems, we would still be playing on the NES. A fine system with a great library of games, but graphically speaking, obviously, you know, things have changed. The medium of video games has changed in terms of worlds that you could create, in terms of storytelling, in terms of what you can actually do in a video game, and that's just within, you know, a 35-year span. It's been a very interesting ride for Nintendo, and the Nintendo Switch was definitely a return to form for the company. Let's be realistic. I loved the Wii U. I thought it was kind of cool, but it didn't sell, man. The launch lineup sucked as far as first-party titles are concerned. Nobody in the world can convince me that New Super Mario Bros. U is a great game. Like, it's fine, it's serviceable, it's a good game, but it's not something I want at the launch of a brand new system, especially when it just looked like an HD Wii game. Of course, the naming of the system, you could go over a myriad of things of why the Wii U failed, but at the end of the day, it did indeed fail. With the Nintendo Switch, though, it was a complete revitalization of Nintendo. Success, huge system sales, huge software sales. Everyone seems to be happy, but of course, time is starting to run out on the system. There's performance issues on first-party games, for God's sake. Like, we have to be realistic about it. In 2017, when it came out, it was fine. It was decent. There was nothing else quite like it. But technology is always changing, and when technology changes, especially in the mobile sphere, which this system is essentially based on, you know, you got to keep up with the Joneses. I still love my Nintendo Switch. I think there's some technical marvels on the system, and I'm always interested to see what developers can do with it. But at some point in time, we have to come to the conclusion that it would be nice to have a little bit more power. And that's what we're all kind of assuming the next Nintendo Switch is going to be. The Nintendo Switch 2, just a beefier, more powerful Nintendo Switch. But as the days go by, and the more I think about it, the more it sort of gets discussed, I'm starting to think that maybe this system isn't going to be a Switch 2.
Don't you say that. Don't you ever say that. For the love of God.
First and foremost, let's look at how Nintendo releases systems and sort of what changes from system to system. We have not gotten a full-on successor in terms of power since the Super Nintendo to the N64 generation. That clearly was just, okay, this is like a Super Nintendo, but stronger. You know, it has more bits than the Super Nintendo. This is about power. Yes, they did introduce things like the analog stick with the system, but realistically, that was the big jump. They still kept the cartridge-based medium. It wasn't until they went to the GameCube with the mini DVD medium that they once again sort of changed the medium, keeping up with the Joneses in terms of power, but still, going from cartridges to disc-based systems meant that you could not play your N64 games on your Nintendo GameCube. Not a huge deal. Of course, then we got the Nintendo Wii, which was, I mean, essentially a little beefier GameCube with motion controls in it. It was backwards compatible. It did work right out of the box and everything was fine with it. But still, the Wii was sort of a sidestep, more so than a full-on jump in terms of things like power. Then, of course, you had the Wii to the Wii U, which was a bit more of a traditional, I guess, sort of console generation, but still, the technology that the Wii U using wasn't exactly cutting edge. Of course, you had the whole gamepad inclusion, which made developers honestly pretty confused with how to sort of release their games for it. What do we need to do with this gamepad? It kind of made some third-party companies shy away, which were initially on board with the Wii U because of the success of the Wii. Everyone thought, oh, well, our games are going to sell on this new system that's evidently more powerful, but it really was a different way to play your games. I mean, even Nintendo didn't know what to do with the bottom screen. Some games like Donkey Kong Country, Tropical Freeze just had absolutely nothing on it. Some games like Star Fox Zero, it required the gamepad in order to play the freaking game, and I feel like that definitely turned some people off. But none of these systems were necessarily just a boost in power where everything was pretty much the same from your previous system. Yes, you did have the ability to play your GameCube games on the Wii, but I mean, that shouldn't come as a shock as the systems were pretty much the same. Yes, you could play your Wii games on the Wii U, but you still had to have the sensor bar and stuff like that, but they both used discs. With the Nintendo Switch though, it was kind of something different once again. It was kind of a different way to play your games because they once again went back to a cartridge-based medium. When you look at how the Nintendo Switch itself was developed and what the Nintendo Switch actually is, it's a Tegra X1 chip, a system on a chip, if you will. Now, the more I think about this, if they go any sort of deviation, even if they don't go in any sort of deviation, isn't it going to be hard to have whatever system on a chip you're using for the next system, assuming that that's the route that they go, while still offering full support for the Tegra X1 chip? Like, I don't think it's necessarily a foregone conclusion that I'm going to be able to pop my Nintendo Switch cartridge that I currently own in whatever system Nintendo comes out with next. What if they go a different physical medium route? If they do that, then your whole library is pretty much kaput. Now, realistically speaking, I think that's a real possibility that could happen. And so many people think, oh, you know, Nintendo's not going to screw this up. They're not going to go in a sort of strange direction with the system. But everything Nintendo has told us thus far, and everything that they've said at these, you know, investor meetings and stuff, whenever it's brought up about new hardware, they never say what they're going to do, but they always say something that catches me off guard. We're looking for different ways to play, new ways to play, ways to expand upon your gameplay experience. That to me doesn't sound like a full-on successor as far as a traditional successor is concerned, where I can pop in my old games. I feel like backwards compatibility is going to be very important with the Nintendo Switch. And I know what you're going to say. Well, RGT, wait a minute, good sir. You're dumb because Nintendo released that little graph where it was like things going forward are going to be, you know, Nintendo, and it said Nintendo Switch and whatever the system is in the future. You got to remember, that's not necessarily talking about the cartridges that we have. That's talking about other things such as the Nintendo Switch Online account, the Nintendo Online account itself. So basically all the stuff, like if you get the Nintendo Switch Online service, that service will still transfer over to the new system. That doesn't require something like a system on a chip or the Tegra X1 chip, because that's using separate emulators to emulate the NES, Super NES, N64, and Sega Genesis games. So I don't think that's necessarily an indicator that backwards compatibility is a lock with this system. Just looking at the history of Nintendo, there's never been a time where it's like backwards compatibility was a lock. Is the Switch backwards compatible with the Wii U? Well, RGT, wait a minute, that's a different physical medium. Who's to say Nintendo isn't going to change the physical medium this time around? They're so hell-bent on always doing a different way to play games, a new way to play games, a new way to experience games. And at some point in time, I feel like you're gonna run out of ideas. There's been rumors about virtual reality potentially being something that Nintendo does with this next system. Why would we laugh at that? They've done virtual reality with the stupid Labo VR kit, didn't they? They sure did. It wasn't really virtual reality. You just put your Switch screen up to your face and it didn't really work well and it was kind of jarring, but essentially Nintendo did dabble in it. You could go back to the Virtual Boy, which I'm still working on a full video for that, but the Virtual Boy was Nintendo's attempt to get into the virtual reality market that was just sort of starting out in the early to mid 90s. Nintendo's not above just going completely off the rails and going in a completely opposite direction of what they've done with the previous system. History says that. Nintendo themselves say that they want a new, fun way to play games. And I have to sit here and question why. Why? Why do we need some sort of gimmick? I mean, gimmick's kind of not a fair word because people associate gimmick with something that's just sort of attached just to be attached. It's not an integral part of the system. But, you know, it's just an easy way to say it. So, for instance, the gimmick for the Nintendo Switch is the fact that it's both a home console and something you could take with you on a go. That's an example of a good gimmick. That's an example of something that is worthwhile. The mini DVD thing on the GameCube, I would say that's an example of a bad gimmick because it was a different medium than what the other companies were using. So with a gimmick, it's like at some point in time, you don't need to do a gimmick. I think a vast majority of people just want a more powerful Nintendo Switch. The same sort of concept, the same sort of thing where it's a home console and a portable console. That's what makes this system interesting because you could take it with you. That's what makes it different from something like the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X. That's what makes it unique. And that in and of itself is enough of a gimmick to want people to get the new edition of it, the new successor of it. But I don't know that I necessarily trust Nintendo to go the logical route. because this is a company that at times makes illogical decisions, just like any company does. This isn't a smear campaign against the Nintendo successor system, but I just see so many people out there talking about the fact that, oh, it's a foregone conclusion. Really? Is it? Because I'm not sure that Nintendo's going to use the same physical medium. I'm not sure that Nintendo is going to figure out a way to either emulate the Tegra X1 or put the Tegra X1 on whatever system that they are now utilizing, whatever this new system may be. I'm not sure that it's a foregone conclusion that a Switch is going to be a Switch. Because look at the Switch Lite. The Switch Lite is not a Nintendo Switch. It is a system that is dedicated to just portable gaming. You can only play that system portably. So it's not outside the realm of possibility for Nintendo to sort of ditch the home console side of things with their own system that they already have released. I'm treading very cautiously with this, though. This is all just sort of speculation. Once we see what we're going to see, once we get what we're going to get with this system, then the questions will be answered. But I just can't help but feel like it's going to be something different. I'm not 100% sure that it's going to be what I want it to be, which is just a more powerful Switch, which I think a vast majority of people want it to be. Look at the jump from the Wii U to the Switch. This was two completely different styles of systems, two systems that did things pretty much completely different. I don't want that sort of thing to happen again. Just keep it simple. I don't understand why we look at systems like the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5, the Xbox to the Xbox Series systems, and we're like, oh, well, that sucks. It's just more powerful. Like, isn't that a better thing? Isn't that what we want these systems to be? Be able to play games, have bigger worlds, have bigger stories, have a bigger impact on the game that you play? I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe I'm alone in this. I just don't think that we should assume that the Nintendo Switch successor is going to be a Nintendo Switch. I think that could be setting up people for disappointment with this. And it's a realization and something that needs to be talked about. It's something that people need to start potentially preparing for, because I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that you're going to get this beefier Nintendo Switch that plays all your games that you already have, but then it plays the new games as well, and it plays the old games better. I mean, Nintendo does like to re-release stuff. Looking at all those awesome Wii U games that came over, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, Donkey Kong Country, Tropical Freeze, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, games that could have just simply came over to the system if backwards compatibility was a thing, but it wasn't. Oh, it's a different medium. You don't know that the Switch successor is going to use the same medium as the Switch. However, I want to hear your thoughts on this, though. So let me know what you think of this in the comments section down below. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We are on the road to 500,000 subscribers. Leave me your thoughts, share the video around, and as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.